I first met Ted Kennedy when I was 18 years old as a volunteer for his first Senate campaign in the summer before I went to college. Then I met him again when I returned from Vietnam and we veterans encamped on the Mall in Washington. It was Ted Kennedy who had the courage to come down to the Mall one night and in a tent listen to us talk about Vietnam. We were controversial, but Ted broke the barriers and other senators followed. He worked his heart out for me in the presidential race of 2004, and he made the difference in Iowa. When we were down in the polls and I was slugging it out there, Ted brought his humor, his energy, and his eloquence to Davenport to help melt the snows of that state. There we were just 2 weeks before the caucuses, and his voice boomed out in this room, "You voted for my brother. You voted for my other brother. You didn't vote for me." And as the crowd roared with laughter, Ted bellowed, "But we're back here for John Kerry, and if you vote for John Kerry, I'll forgive you." "You can have 3 out of 4, he said. "And I'll love you, and I'll love Iowa." And let me tell you, Iowa loved him. We had a lot of fun there. He would open an event, and he'd come out, and he'd say, "I want to talk to you about a bold, handsome, intelligent leader, a man who should not only be president, but who should end up on Mount Rushmore. But enough about me. Now I'll talk about John Kerry." After that agonizing Tuesday night in November when we fell so short in one state, there were Ted and Vicki on a Wednesday morning, sitting with Teresa and me in the kitchen in Boston as we prepared to concede. He was always there when you needed him. And so were Sonny and Splash, incidentally, when you didn't. Once when we were at a Senate retreat, Ted had just spoken, and then Joe Biden got up to make a point and rejoined her. And as Joe got more forceful in his argument, he started to gesture, and he took a step towards Ted. Boom! Sonny and Splash were up on their feet, barking wildly. And I'll get it to defending Kennedy territory with a vengeance. And ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in history, we witnessed a Biden rhetorical retreat. And I have to tell you, one of my really favorite moments was Ted campaigning with my daughter Vanessa, who was here, campaigning in New Mexico. They were visiting an Indian reservation, and the tribal medicine man wanted to bestow a blessing. He took a feather, and he chanted, and he asked that Ted and Vanessa stand side by side and extend their hands and bow their heads. And with a sacred feather, he touched their feet, and he touched their foreheads, and he touched their hands, all the while chanting away. And when he finished, Ted leaned over to Vanessa and whispered, "I think we just got married." Well, you can imagine. Now, a couple of months later, she got a note from Teddy which said, "No matter what happens, we will always have New Mexico." One of the framed notes in Ted's Senate office was a thank you from a colleague for a gift, a special edition of Profiles in Courage. This is what it said. "I brought it home and reread it. What an inspiration. Thank you, my friend, for your many courtesies. If the world only knew." It was signed by Trent Lott, the Republican leader of the Senate. Indeed, if everyone only knew. When George Wallace was wounded in an assassination attempt, the first to visit him was Ted Kennedy. When Joe Biden underwent brain surgery for an aneurysm, the first to board the train to Wilmington was Ted Kennedy. When Jesse Helms announced that he had to undergo heart surgery, heart valve surgery, Helms told his constituents back in North Carolina, "It's no piece of cake, but it sure beats listening to Ted Kennedy on the Senate floor." So Ted wrote a note to Jesse saying, I'd be happy to send you tapes of my recent Senate speeches if that will help your speedy recovery. And just 2 weeks ago, when I was in the hospital after hip surgery, just like Chris Dodd, there was Ted Kennedy on the phone asking how I was doing with all that he was dealing with. In his life, as we all know, Ted knew the dark night of loss. And I think that's why his empathy was global and deeply personal. After my father died of cancer just days before the convention in 2000, there was a knock at the door, completely unexpected, and standing there on the front porch was Ted Kennedy, dropping by to hug and talk and just to pass time with us. For 25 years, I was privileged to work by his side, learning from the master. And over the years, I've received hundreds of handwritten notes from Ted, some funny, some touching, a few correcting me, all of them special treasures now. He thanked me for my gift of a Catholic study Bible, commenting, "My mother would be very grateful to you for keeping me in line." He thanked me for a particularly challenging charter lift home after 9/11 when it was hard to get anything in the air. And he wrote, "Here's a riddle for you. What do you get when you make 3 calls to the FAA, 2 calls to the Secretary of Transportation, and 3 calls to Signature Flight Support? You get a great trip to Boston." His way of saying thank you. And he thanked Teresa and me for the gift of a vintage bottle, concluding, "I just hope that I've aged as well as this wine."